A 6-year-old girl walked into an animal shelter and almost immediately noticed something that everyone else had been walking past. At the very end of the kennel row lay a dog so thin it was hard to look at for long. His ribs showed through his fur, and he barely moved as he rested against the wall. A bowl of food sat right beside him untouched. Visitors stopped there for a moment, shook their heads and quietly moved on. But this girl did not. What happened next would later be replayed again and again on the shelter's security cameras because none of the workers could believe what they were seeing because this dog had not eaten for a long time. The shelter staff had tried everything, but day after day, the bowl remained full while the dog slowly grew weaker. The girl's name is Clara, and she is 6 years old. Clara has always been a little different from other children her age. She is quiet, patient, and often feels more comfortable around animals than around people. At school, she sometimes struggles to make friends. Not because she is unkind, but because she speaks softly and prefers calm moments instead of noisy games. This highlights a beautiful truth about empathy. Sometimes those who speak the least are the ones who feel the most. Animals, however, seem to understand her immediately. There is a neighbor who lives a few houses away from Clara's family, an older man who travels often for work. Whenever he leaves town, Clara is the one who walks over to his yard to help take care of his dog. She fills the bowl, brushes his fur, and sits beside him on the porch while he rests his head against her knee. The dog listens to her in a way that surprises even the neighbor. But Clara's parents have always been careful about one thing. They do not want a dog at home. They worry it would be too much responsibility for a 6-year-old child. So when Clara's school organized a visit to the local animal shelter, her parents agreed. It was just a field trip, a chance for the children to learn about animals and maybe help the shelter by bringing drawings and toys. It was meant to be an educational day, about the importance of caring for those who cannot care for themselves. None of them expected that the visit would change 2 lives forever. While the other children walked excitedly through the building, stopping at every kennel and pointing at the playful puppies jumping against the gates, Clara kept thinking about the dog at the end of the hallway, the thin one, the one that had not even lifted his head when people passed. After a few minutes, she quietly walked back toward that kennel. The dog was still lying in the same place. The bowl of food was still untouched. Clara stood there watching him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised one of the volunteers nearby. She opened the gate and stepped inside the kennel. The volunteers started to say something, but Clara had already sat down on the floor beside the dog, leaving enough space so he would not feel trapped or afraid. She understood instinctively that trust cannot be forced. It must be earned with stillness and respect. For several seconds, nothing happened. The dog did not move. He did not even look at her. Clara reached slowly toward the bowl of food, picked up a small piece, and held it gently in her hand. She did not push it toward him. She simply waited. The security camera above the hallway recorded the moment clearly. The dog slowly lifted his head. For the first time since arriving at the shelter, he looked at someone with real attention. Then, very carefully, he leaned forward and took the food from Clara's hand. The volunteer watching from the hallway froze because that dog had refused every meal for many days. But now he was eating from a child's hand. When the shelter staff reviewed the footage later that evening, they could not believe what they were seeing. Several of them replayed the moment again and again, watching the same quiet scene where a starving dog finally accepted food. It was a powerful lesson for everyone watching, that sometimes the simplest act of presence is the greatest medicine. From that day forward, Clara returned to the shelter every afternoon after school with one of her parents. She would sit beside the dog and feed him small pieces of food from her hand, while speaking to him softly. At first he only ate a little, but slowly, day after day, the bowl beside him started to empty. The dog began to regain strength. Within 2 weeks, he started standing when Clara arrived. Within a month, he wagged his tail. During that time, the shelter staff also discovered the rest of his story. The dog's name was Orion. He had belonged to a retired firefighter named Julian Reed. For nearly 8 years, the two of them had been inseparable. Julian had rescued Orion as a puppy during a call to a house fire. And from that day forward, the dog followed him everywhere. But several months earlier, Julian had passed away suddenly. Family members tried to care for Orion, but the dog never adapted to the new home. Eventually, he ran away and was found weeks later near a highway outside the city, thin, exhausted, and completely alone. Orion had been found late in the evening on the side of a highway just outside the city. A driver had noticed him standing near the edge of the road. They thought the dog might run, but he did not. He just stood there, thin, exhausted, and completely still, as if he no longer had the strength to care where he was. When animal control arrived, Orion did not resist. He did not bark. He did not try to run. He simply allowed himself to be led into the vehicle, lowering his head the entire time. When they brought him to the shelter, the staff immediately noticed how severe his condition was. His ribs were visible, his movements were slow, and his eyes carried a kind of emptiness that experienced workers recognized right away. This was not just hunger. This was something deeper. They gave him food that same night. He did not touch it. The next morning, the bowl was still full. By the second day, the staff began to worry. They tried different types of food, different feeding schedules, quieter rooms, even hand feeding. Nothing worked. Orion did not react to anyone. People would stop in front of his kennel, some of them whispering, laughing, others shaking their heads in disbelief at how thin he was. No one understood what was really happening. They were seeing his body, but they were missing his broken heart. The shelter arranged a full medical examination. They checked for injuries, infections, internal problems, anything that could explain his condition. The results came back clear. Physically, he could recover, but emotionally something was broken. The veterinarian explained it quietly to the staff. Severe stress, loss, he is shutting down. Days passed and Orion grew weaker. The staff continued trying, but each attempt ended the same way. The bowl stayed full, and the dog remained still. By the time Clara walked into the shelter that day, Orion had already begun to fade in a way that no medication could fix, because what he had lost could not be replaced with food or treatment. When Clara heard that story, she sat quietly beside Orion and gently placed her hand on his head. "You are not alone now," she said softly. From that day on, she did not miss a single visit. Every afternoon after school, Clara came back to the shelter. Sometimes she brought small pieces of food. Sometimes she just sat beside Orion and talked to him in that same calm, steady voice. She never rushed him, never forced him, and never seemed disappointed on the days he ate a little less. This teaches us the value of unconditional support. She loved him exactly as he was, even in his weakness. But little by little, things began to change. Orion started lifting his head the moment he saw her. Then he began to stand. Then one afternoon, his tail moved for the first time. The staff noticed it immediately. "He is waiting for her," one of them said quietly. Weeks passed and the routine stayed the same. Clara would sit beside him, feed him from her hand, and stay longer than anyone expected a 6-year-old to have the patience for. At home, she talked about Orion constantly. At first, her parents listened without saying much. They had always been firm about not having a dog, but now something felt different. They could see it in the way Clara spoke, in the way she smiled when she mentioned his name. They realized that Clara was not just asking for a pet. She was asking to keep a promise she had made to a friend. One evening after another visit, Clara looked at them and asked the question again, "Can he come home with us?" This time, they did not answer right away. A few days later, they went back to the shelter together, and before Clara even realized what was happening, the paperwork was already being prepared. Orion was going home. The first weeks were quiet. Clara stayed close to him, giving him space when he needed it, sitting beside him when he rested, and continuing the same gentle routine she had started in the shelter. They took him to the veterinarian regularly, making sure his recovery stayed on track. Slowly, steadily, Orion began gaining weight. His energy returned, his movements became stronger, and the tired, empty look in his eyes started to disappear. Month by month, he changed. His ribs were no longer visible. His coat became healthier. And most importantly, he began to act like a dog again. He followed Clara everywhere. Every morning, he walked with her to the front of the house when it was time for school. And every afternoon, he was already waiting near the door before she even stepped inside. Clara changed too. At school, her teachers began to notice that she was more open, more confident, more willing to talk and laugh with other children. She still preferred quiet moments, but now she was not alone during recess. Sometimes she told stories about Orion. Sometimes other kids asked to see him. And slowly, things became easier for her. She had learned that her quiet voice had the power to save a life, and that gave her the courage to use it more often. At home, their days were filled with simple moments, playing in the yard, sitting together in the evenings, walking through the neighborhood with Orion proudly trotting beside her. Even the neighbor's dog, the one Clara used to take care of, became part of their routine. The two dogs learned to trust each other, running together across the grass while Clara watched and laughed. It was not something dramatic. It was not something loud, but it was everything they both needed, because the dog who had once stopped eating had found a reason to live again, and the girl who had struggled to be understood had found someone who understood her without words. This journey reminds us that healing is a shared path, and that compassion is the strongest bond of all. In the end, they did not just save each other. They gave each other a life that neither of them could have found alone. Feel your tummy moving. It is like waves. You are safe. I am right here.